That's it. Sorry, screen went a little dark there at the end. My battery is running. Okay, so again, sadly, Jeffrey can't join us, so we can't cite into his story just now, but if anybody has any thoughts or comments or suggestions, I know he would appreciate it. Does anybody want to start?
Love how visual his writing is. It's just a great balance between, I feel like I can really see every scene. He just does a great job with that, of just setting every scene visually so well, I thought.
Yeah, I agree. I feel that we really have a sense of Thomas's world, the world that he's living in, and how disconnected he is to it. How he doesn't fit into this world, despite everybody's efforts to make him fit into this world. I love how, when we go inside his thoughts, we literally go inside his thoughts, and we have those little animated sequences. I think that's a really beautiful touch. I would love to see some concept art for those, actually. I think one of my suggestions is really just down to the character descriptions, rather than making them purely physical, which they are, maybe give us a bit more insight into their personalities when you intro them. Yeah. Just one minor note. It's not a big deal. It's honestly very small, but just I guess a lot of name repetition in the description. So just as an example, it could be something like, Thomas gets dressed, and then Thomas gives himself a thumbs up. So you can just say Thomas gets dressed and gives himself a thumbs up. I think, you can take out the pronouns, the personal pronouns, get rid of the names and just start using, he, she, they, whatever, and probably even conjugate some sentences together.
Mm-hmm.
But again, very minor, and take it with a grain of salt, as always.
I think the one comment I have is the part of the story that's interesting is that the main character is gay. Like that's a little different. I didn't see that coming, but I would only say that a lot of the other characters kind of fall into like the tropes. There's a lot of stuff that seemed like really trite, and also stuff that we've just seen before. Whether it's Moonlight or American Gangster, like the story of a drug addict parent and a kid who's trying to overcome those circumstances. I feel like we've seen that a lot
Mm-hmm.
before. So like I like the idea what you were talking about, Kelly, where you're saying like give some sort of visual like in the animated scenes, like maybe that's how the movie starts or something like that, just to kind of set it apart a little bit, because at the moment I just feel like there's a lot of stuff that's just very trite, and the characters are falling into those tropes.
And I think that's something that could also be helped by building out those character descriptions, again, going beyond the physical trait and actually telling us what their personalities are like. I would agree that I think especially with the women characters, so I feel Eve is more fleshed out than Lily or Mona Lisa, and granted we don't know how big a role those women are going to play, but they're very one-dimensional right now. And I know that Mona Lisa is a prostitute, and she's got to sell herself, and she's got to make, she's running a business basically, right. And we're seeing that, but I kind of want to get some insights into other parts of her personality. Same with Lily. And John, I would agree, even with Eve, even though we do get, we have a lot of time with Eve, I think, we can go a bit deeper into who she is beyond being an addict, because addicts aren't just addicts, and they're addicts for a reason, they're right. Dealing with things. So, maybe some more character moments with some of these people would help give us greater insight into who they are and into their inner thoughts. And maybe something right. to consider is that whenever we're going into the inner thoughts of the character, it's always animated. It doesn't matter who it is. That could be something to consider as well, to really set this apart.
Yeah, it would be nice, because it might serve Thomas's story a little bit more too. Like maybe Eve had some sort of ambitions for school or for writing or something like that, and that's why Thomas is the way he is, or whoever. I guess clearly this father or maybe stepfather character that we haven't seen yet has those, and kind of feeds why Thomas is the way he is, or has ambitions as to what they are. But at the moment, I just don't see much from Eve that is really that interesting.
I mean, I feel she does have a spark to her. She does have a fire. Like, she has no problem pushing back against anybody, whether it's her son, whether it's a drug dealer, which that could potentially be a dangerous relationship, but she has no problem like challenging them. And so I do appreciate that side of her character. Again, we're not necessarily being fair because Jeffrey isn't here to tell us, more about the story and take us into Act 2 and Act 3. But I'm assuming that we will get more of her backstory as the story continues. But yes, as we as a group have already discussed, like having more of those moments in the beginning to at least hint at her history or her story or other parts of her personality, I think would add a great deal. Any other comments?
I'm usually the most long-winded, so I try to wait until everybody else. So, like you said, he's not here because there are questions I would ask, like, is this first draft? Is this kind of like a run through and he's kind of finding it as he goes? Because like John said, there's elements of Midnight. I can see elements of Finding Forrester.
Yeah.
But I think the problem I have is that the what he wants is such it's like he has a plan. He's going to go to college, but he writes poetry. So does he want to go to college to write more, to learn to write better poetry, or just to have more exposure? It's like the plan seems kind of, I'm trying to find the right way to phrase it, because everything feels like kind of, it's like, the worst things you see are when somebody watches like a TV show about cops and then writes the TV show about cops based on what they saw on the TV show about cops, because Kyle's on a conversation about closing a deal. And, screw those Wall Street guys. But what does that mean? What exactly does Kyle do? Like that, it felt like it's just very surface research. Like it's not like what's actually going on there. What does Thomas actually want? He wants to get away from his parents. But there was a white foster family mixed in there someplace. So what's going on?
Yeah.
They're like all these, we're getting like little glimpses of pieces of things. But by the time we get to page 26, and yeah, there's a slow burn element to it, but it doesn't feel like anything kind of coalesces into something where I'm getting like an idea of a full picture of where it's going. Maybe that's the intent. Maybe it's kind of like it's a first draft and he's feeling his way through and he's trying to, it's one of those, like, I'm throwing everything down on the page and, I'm going to wind up weaning stuff and cleaning up after the fact. But in the stuff that we have, like the focal point that I kept coming to is Thomas is the main character. Thomas spends, and it was kind of hitting me because when we started, it was like, all right, you're going to read Thomas. Thomas is the main character. And it almost feels like Eve is more the main character. It feels like it's more like her story, like the guy that she was with, the husband or boyfriend or whatever he is in the beginning. My assumption is that those bang, 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 those gunshots killed him. And there's an interesting element to Thomas and we're going to see this fish out of water element with him and him finding himself and what becomes, based on the logline, this relationship with, a white businessman, kind of takes him under his wing. But the interesting thing for me really is the Eve version of the story. Like, how did she get from, she's taking pictures, everybody's happy in the park, and now all of a sudden she's stealing money from her son and she's a drug addict, and like, where did that come from? I want to know what that story is. And that's probably, I'm hoping that that's something that gets laid out over the next, 80 pages.
Yeah.
But what
I just want to interject for Jeffrey, when you are listening to this, if you want to forward on any additional information or just some questions, please feel free to send that to me, and I will happily, send it to Joe, Holly, and John. But yes, I'm assuming that Eve turned to drugs as a coping mechanism for what happened to their family. Like she
Yeah,
just
that's like
didn't know how to handle it.
but I mean
That's an assumption.
yeah, no, I mean it's a fair. I made the same assumption, but the story of like that fall from grace, because we jump so far from him as a 4-year-old to him, you know, he's however old it is, his 20s, early 20s. So it's a 17-year jump. So, but then there's that foster family angle. So it's like, what happened? How did the two of them wind up? And these are things that may wind up getting explained throughout the rest of the script. But it just feels like there's a tease and a tease, and like all these little breadcrumbs are laid out and trails going in all these different directions. And by the time we get to the end of the first act, it's like, all right, he's setting off on this path, but what is the path? It's this college angle. But why does he want to go to college? If he's already writing poetry, he doesn't really need to go to college. Maybe he's not aware of that. He doesn't.
I think he sees it as, I think he just wants to get the fuck out, to be honest. He wants to get the fuck out, and he sees college as his chance to do that, to get, you know, far enough away, you know, because Chicago and St. Louis, like that's a decent amount of distance, and he's in a big city. He has lots of opportunities there. He has a chance to meet people and engage with people, like be around like-minded people, being at college, so other writers, what have you.
But I think part of the problem though is that he doesn't, like there's no real conversation. There's no real point where like that idea comes up, because he doesn't have anybody to confide in, which is, I guess, the point. It's like you guys said, it's like it's the fish out of water element, which makes sense. But at a certain point, it's kind of like, all right, but why? Because the question I kept asking as I'm reading his lines and as I'm going through it, I'm like, all right, so he's at the cemetery. I'm assuming he's there for his dad, or, you know, his stepfather, whoever that father figure is in the beginning. That's, you know, he's there and he's reading this poetry and he's doing this thing, and I've got a plan. And the plan is essentially just to go to college and then write more poetry. And maybe it's just to get away, and that's the plan to do that. But it feels like it's like there's a lot of slice of life elements, and there are scenes that don't push that narrative forward. Like there's a scene when just a guy walks in, like, hey, how's the writing going? Oh, it's going good. Okay, on to the next scene. Okay, the writing's going good. There are just too many pieces
right
kind of there, and they're not filling in those blanks. Like there are ways to push those ideas forward. Like he really wants this. Like maybe we get voiceover of him writing inside this journal, and she's talking about, oh, you think, because we hear it from her. It's like we're getting that third hand. We're getting that from her saying, oh, I read your journals, I think you're going to be the next Shakespeare or whatever. And he's got all these books of poetry on the walls. As much of a trope as it almost feels like it would be to have him, you know, we get a little bit of it. I think there's one line of it, but voiceovers of him writing his thoughts down. If he's not telling anybody else what he wants, and he's kind of, because he's not really pursuing it. It's just like a letter shows up in the mail, and we make the assumption that he applied to the school, and we see him writing letters, but he's not actually pursuing anything until he calls Kyle. But that's not really what the objective is. That's not what the plan is. So it's like there's no active push forward that this is what I want and this is how I'm going to go about getting it. And he doesn't confide in anybody because there's nobody for him to talk to until Kyle comes along, and maybe that's where that starts. But just from an opening standpoint, it just feels like it's like a half step forward, and then half of that half step, and then half of that half step, and we're just kind of taking baby steps moving toward, like, all these things are just kind of leading into taking us to the relationship part, where, you know, maybe there's a way to get to that sooner, or maybe Kyle plays some role in him trying to get into school. Maybe there's some angle there. That's just spitballing. I don't know that that's the answer, but it just feels like all these disparate elements are just kind of all there, and it doesn't really, parts of it kind of come together and parts of it kind of indicate that it may come together, but it's not actually moving forward in a story narrative sense. By the time we get to the end of the first act, I'm guessing just kind of where we are, that like that's the push into the second act, because now he's entered this new world. But it also feels like it's the setup of it feels I think the problem is the Kyle thing, because like Kyle is this business guy and he's in what I'm assuming is the not so great part of St. Louis, buying, he's in a liquor store and he somehow forgets his card and all of a sudden the sparks fly between the two of them. It's almost like, okay, I guess I'll buy that. That's
do you think it would be, because I'm assuming that Kyle is anything but straight, or we're going to see that he's anything but straight, that's gay or bi or poly or what have you. Do you want some sort of hint to that? Like we get a nice hint about Thomas's sexuality, he's masturbating in the bathroom. Do you want something like with something similar for Kyle help before they actually connect in the store?
I think we get that with the pregnant wife, and she's like, it'd be nice if we did something, and he just gets up.
Oh, right. Yep.
You get like that little glimpse, like there's something else going on there, but it's like Kyle is just like he's a blank slate out, because all we know is that he's got this pregnant wife. He argues with her in the beginning. He throws something in the water. There's this hint of don't have an abortion this time. But then there's a picture of her where she's younger and pregnant. So is there another kid someplace? Did they give the kid up for adoption? He's not really interested in fooling around with her, but is that just because he's repulsed by the fact that she's pregnant? Is that because he's not into her because he's having an affair someplace else? Is it because he's gay, bi, poly, whatever it is, and he's got this interest in this kid? Is that what he's doing? Is he cruising actually in this neighborhood looking for somebody? Is there some kind of an angle like that? Like there are all these questions that hang out there, and you're kind of sitting there by the end of it. Like usually by the end of the first act, you're kind of like, when you get to the end of your first act and you're pushing into the second, it's kind of like you have an idea, like, all right, here's where we're going. Tables may turn or whatever else, but we kind of know the table's been set. Everybody has a knife and a fork and a spoon, and whether or not they're actually going to use it to eat or stab each other or throw them in the room, whatever. Like those pieces are there, and it feels like we're still setting the table for certain things. Like, is Kyle cruising? Is there something else going on? Is this just really like some weird fairy tale meet-up romance thing like Pretty Woman? It just, like he doesn't, and that's a legitimate thing. Like he has a stick shift. He doesn't know how to drive and he's having trouble with it. And, Julia Roberts is working the corner and she just happens to come over and, hit on him. And he's offering her like, well, if you can, tell me how to get to this hotel and help me drive the stick, then we have a deal. But this feels like this felt more forced. Like the credit card thing felt more forced because the conversation having felt forced.
If we had a reason for Kyle being in that neighborhood, would that help? Perhaps like even like leaving the credit card behind. Like if we believed that he was in that area for a reason, we could believe that he might accidentally leave his credit card walking into the store.
And this is
because I get it, because he's very elite, he's very high end. But why is he in that store? Like why is he in that neighborhood? He just shows up.
I don't know if it ruins things because I don't know where the story goes from here. But does it ruin things if you set up, Kyle is, Kyle, when she's like, oh, it would be nice if we did something, and he like grabs his keys and he leaves, and we see him like cruising in like a bad area of town, like a guy gets into he's driving like, I don't know, an Audi. He's driving an Audi A7 or he's driving a Mercedes or something, and he goes into like, some shitty area and he just picks up some kid in his car and they drive off. Then we're like, okay. And then he's kind of doing something similar when we see this. Then we're like, all right, we know what's going on. We know where this is heading. And the dynamic becomes, Kyle does this and Kyle cruises and Kyle kind of has this secret lifestyle. Thomas also has this secret lifestyle, but for Thomas, this is a way bigger deal than just being some kid that gets picked up on the street, because that's what that kid's life is. Thomas, this is a little more, this is more love connection-y. This is like somebody I can open up to, somebody that can help me, point me in the right direction, whatever. But without knowing that, it's just kind of like, it just kind of lays there. It's not like the expectation. I don't have an expectation because I don't know which.
Yeah.
I mean, again, without knowing the rest of it, it's like maybe that's the intent and that stuff is going to get squared away as we move forward. I don't know.
But
it just left me with more questions than anything.
My take on it, and again, this could be absolutely wrong, is that, and I think we kind of, I feel that we get a semblance of this when we go inside Thomas's head. We kind of get the sense that he lives in a fantasy world. And he seems to definitely have a fantasy about, you know, stable or, you know, middle or upper class white people. You know, we get this sense that he has a lot of nostalgia for his white foster family, like that was a good time in his life, or he was cared for, he was taken care of, he was provided for. You know, we kind of get that sense when he's flipping through the magazine and he sees, you know, like the hunky white guy, like that's what gets him turned on. And then and so I'm kind of wondering if he's, if the story is going in a direction where it's about him coming out of that fantasy. So maybe he meets Kyle and almost kind of sees him as his ticket out of there, as his ticket to get to Chicago, or his ticket to get into college. And it's really about his journey to rely on himself, that he has to take action, because I agree that we don't necessarily get the sense that he's taken much action aside from seeing that letter in the mail. And yeah, like, I think you had a great question. Is it an acceptance letter? Or is it just like a letter of interest? Like, we're sending you more information about our school or whatever, but yeah.
Hey, sorry, just to interrupt real quick. I gotta dash because I had to make a an audition tape that's due by 10, so I gotta get off.
Oh, yes.
Sorry,
yes. John. Thank you so much for your time. No,
Yeah,
no,
of course.
don't apologize.
No, this is really
Sorry.
cool. I'm really grateful you guys invited me to join. I just gotta get going for this tape real quick.
Well, good luck with the audition.
Yeah,
and
thank you.
Hopefully we'll see you soon. Thank you again.
Yeah.
I appreciate you participating.
Yeah, cool. I look forward to seeing the rest of the emails. Nice to meet you guys.
Good to meet you. Bye, John.
Yeah, so I mean, it's like, again, it's like, I did a group in New York, and you read like 15 pages, and I would say all the time, it's hard because I'm reading 15 pages and I don't know, sometimes I'm reading the middle 15 pages, sometimes I'm reading the end. So it's like, I'm giving notes, but I can't really give a note on the overall story because I don't have the entire story. I've got 15 pages, so I'm kind of left to judging, you know, your grammar and, and structure and the way you're, the way you're telling, you know, the way you're telling this piece of this story, which doesn't give me the whole thing. So I would need to read the whole thing. I would need to see the whole thing, but I would also like to know, like, you know, where is it, like, first draft? Is he still like working through it? You said he's based in Poland. Is that like a permanent residence thing? Is he?
Yeah. Yes.
Okay.
Okay. I'm not entirely sure. I mean, he is American born, but he's lived all over the world. So he has quite a diverse background. He's a writer, obviously, but he is also working in video game design. Like, that's what's paying the bills right now, from my understanding. And I think that's what's taken him to Warsaw for the time being. But yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know if that helped at all.
No, I mean, it gives, I was wondering about that because it's also some of the intro lines, some of the lines were kind of like, I was reading them kind of like, oh, it almost seems like it's kind of like a British European style way of introducing location settings and stuff. So I was wondering about that. Yeah, I think I just need more information to kind of to fill out the more I know about it, and the more, because, you know, knowing where it ends up, I can kind of go back to the first act and say, okay, I can see, you know, where this is going now. So now this makes more sense, and here's a way to maybe tie this together towards the third act to tighten that part up. Yeah, I mean, I'm always, I'm usually, you know, in our group that we do here at my place, I always make myself the last person to go give notes because I usually, as you may have noticed, I talk a lot.
Yes, so. Like you said, long-winded. Yeah. Not going to argue.
Yeah, but I mean, if I sit and I like vivisect, I take the whole thing apart and I'm like, all right, where, you know, the knee bone's connected to the thigh bone, the blah, blah, blah. I go through the whole thing, like, how is this all connected? Where is this going and what's happening?
Well, let's call it a night for now, because it is getting on. We've been at this for almost 3 hours actually, and we don't have Jeffrey here. But again, I just want to put it to Jeffrey when he listens to this that, you know, please don't hesitate to send more information to me, and I will happily share it with our attendees tonight. Because I feel it isn't, you know, it isn't fair that he can't give us more info and tell us where the story goes, etc. But hopefully all of this will still be helpful for him in capacity. All right. So are we okay to sign off, guys? Sorry, I know for Holly especially, it's pretty late. It's after 11 o'clock for Holly.
Ooh, it's 11:15. It's so late.
I know, but look, well, I mean, normally if we go like past 10 p.m. your time, in the past you chimed in a bit that it's starting to get late, so that's why I was a little concerned.
It is late. It's just I'm tired too. So, but
thank you for sticking it out. I appreciate it. I mean, thanks to everybody who stuck it out. Like, you know, yeah, all of you guys, because I know we had a later start and it was not easy. We were all reading multiple parts, but I think we pulled it off.
We did all right. I mean, the only closing piece of business is Kelly get to Kinko's, those headshots.
Yes.
Phil wants them as
I'm on it.
Apparently, so I don't know how to take that. I'm a little insulted.
I'm gonna have them, you know, made into like those little fans, so we can all just hold them up to our faces and pretend to be you while we're in Austin.
And have the mouth cut out so you can just talk through it and be like, and that's good, because that way everybody can just babble incoherently, just talk repeatedly, and it'll be like you're me.
Yeah. Oh, and Holly, I apologize. I did get your message on stage 32. I'm so sorry. Like, I really check my stage 32 anymore.
Okay.
But yes, I will get your phone number into my contacts, and I will happily text you once I'm on the ground, and I will look forward to meeting you.
Hey, if I make it into the pitch finale, I'll let everybody know. But you know, I think that's a slim chance. But I'm going for it, so we'll see.
You should. And if I'm so sorry, I can't remember. You may have included this in the message that you sent me over stage 32, but if you don't mind sending me like your time slot, I think guests are welcome to come in and sit. If you don't mind me coming in to sit, I would love to watch you pitch.
Okay, yeah, I'll put it in there. Sure.
It's up to you. It's totally up to you. Anyway. Okay, guys.
Yes. Thanks, Kelly.
Thanks, guys. I really appreciate it. Holly, I'll see you soon. Joe, I'll hopefully see you soon in LA. And yeah, I'll be in touch with you all in the relatively near future about next month's session.
Enjoy Austin.
Okay, thanks
Thank
so much.
you. You will be missed. Bye,
Bye-bye.
guys. Have a good night.
Bye.